Hello dear students, welcome back to this lesson of punctuation. I'm Dr. Madhuri Goswami, Associate Professor of English, Government Girls College, Chomu. This lesson is the second part of the punctuation lesson. In the previous lesson, we have studied what is punctuation, why do we need punctuation, and how many punctuation marks or symbols are there in English. As I told you that I have divided these punctuation marks into 5 categories. The first category is the terminal punctuation that we have already studied in the previous lesson. Just to have a quick recap, there are 3 terminal punctuations: full stop, and that's also known as the period in American English. In the British English, it is called the full stop. The second punctuation mark that we studied is the question mark. It's simply used at the end of questions. And the third terminal punctuation that we studied in the previous class is the exclamation mark. Now, let's move further and see what we will study today in this lesson. Well, let's see now what punctuation marks have been put in the second category. We will study the pause punctuation used to indicate the pause in a sentence. But remember, there is a difference between pause and stop. In the first category, we studied those punctuation marks that are used to indicate a stop and also tells that now a new sentence will begin after that punctuation. Whereas the pause punctuation indicates the slight pause or a halt for a short time. In this category, we have 3 punctuation marks: comma, semicolon, and colon. This part of the lesson is very important because most of the people commit mistake in the use of comma, colon, and semicolon because all of them are used to indicate a pause in a series and it might create a confusion. Well, let's take up comma first because this is the most commonly used and at the same time misused punctuation mark. There are a lot of rules that need to be followed while using comma. Let's discuss few of them, the rules which everybody should know to clear the confusion. The first basic and most common use of comma is to separate items in a list. That means we use commas when we are listing 3 or more things, and these things might be words, phrases, or clauses. Look at the example. She is young, beautiful, kind, and intelligent. Another example. The house has 2 bedrooms, a large living room, 2 bathrooms, and a terrace. Did you notice that the last 2 words in the list, they are connected with the conjunction and no comma used? Some people choose to put a comma before the word and this comma is known in English grammar as Oxford comma. In this case, we can say both styles are possible, both ways are possible, but usually we do not use a comma before the word and after this the second last item or the penultimate item of the list, but if it's used, it's not incorrect. The acceptable thing about this use of Oxford comma that is used before the word and after the second last word of the list is that it's used to clarify the long phrases. When we use the long phrases in a sentence and when we separate them, there we use the comma after the second last phrase of the sentence to make the meaning clear. Likewise, this use of separating items in a list, we use commas when we have more than one adjective in a row describing something. For example, my dress was blue, sparkly, and long. Please notice the use of commas in this sentence. But we do not use commas when we are listing less than 3 things. The next important use of comma is while writing emails or letters. When we write a letter, we address someone like dear sir or dear madam. Then we use a comma after this salutation. The comma is also used after the closing correspondence phrase like yours truly, yours faithfully, or yours sincerely. Dear students, I have noticed quite common mistakes while using these closing correspondence phrases. So please note that only the first letter of the first word of the closing phrase is capitalized. Yours faithfully. So Y will be capitalized. F of faithfully will not be written in capital. It will be written only in the small case. The same way, yours truly, Y will be written in capital and rest of the letters will be written in small case. But don't forget to use comma after these phrases. The next use of comma is a bit complicated, but I will try to make it simple for you. But please listen carefully. We use a comma when we combine two independent clauses in a sentence. And at the same time, if we are using one of these 7 coordinating conjunctions to connect those independent clauses, and these conjunctions are and, but, so, for, or, nor, and yet. Well, let's understand it with an example. I hope you know what are clauses and what is a dependent clause and what's an independent clause. If not, then let me tell you first this thing. Clauses are parts of a sentence, parts of a longer sentence. And a clause has a subject and a predicate. If that clause is dependent for its complete meaning on another clause, then it's dependent clause. But if it gives complete meaning, it conveys a complete idea without the help of another clause or anything else, then this is the independent clause. And here in this case, we are talking of 2 independent clauses. Let's have an example. I need to buy a dress. So, I'm going to market. Notice the use of comma just after the first clause, then a space, and then the use of the coordinating conjunction so. So please remember, whenever you use a coordinating conjunction, use a comma before it. He worked hard, but he could not pass the exam. When I say this sentence, I make a pause after the first clause. That is the use of comma. Now let's see, in case of an independent clause and a dependent clause, do we use comma? What do you say or what do you think about it? Yes or no? Okay, I'll tell you. If there is a dependent clause and independent clause in a sentence, there might be 2 situations. First situation is the dependent clause comes first and it's followed by the independent clause. In this case, we use a comma. If the subordinate or dependent clause comes first, then we use comma to connect these 2 clauses in that sentence. Okay, let's understand this theory with an example. If you work hard, you will get success. In this example, the first clause, if you work hard, is a dependent clause because it cannot convey its meaning without the support of the independent clause. The independent clause in this sentence is, you will get success. It's complete in itself, so it's independent. So in this sentence, we have the sequence of these clauses, first the dependent clause and then the independent clause. That's why there is the use of comma to connect these 2 clauses. I hope you must have got the point. But if this order is reversed, if we have first the independent clause and then we have the dependent clause in the sentence, in that case, we do not use comma to connect these 2 clauses in that sentence. For example, he was so happy when his mother came to visit him. In this sentence, we will not use a comma to connect these 2 clauses because the first clause, I was so happy, is the independent clause, and the second, when his mother came to visit him, its dependent clause. As the order in this sentence is reversed, first independent clause and then the dependent clause, then you don't use a comma. Dear students, we have seen in this lesson so far 5 basic uses of comma. The first basic use of comma is to separate the items in a list, to add pauses and to list things clearly. That means कॉमा एक ऐसा पंक्चुएशन मार्क है जिसका सेंटेंसेस में बहुत अधिक प्रयोग किया जाता है। कॉमा का यूज़ हम आइडियाज़ को सेपरेट करने के लिए या फिर आइटम्स ऑफ लिस्ट को सेपरेट करने के लिए, वो एक सेंटेंस में भी हो सकते हैं, क्लॉज के रूप में हो सकते हैं, फ्रेजेस के रूप में हो सकते हैं या फिर वर्ड्स के रूप में हो सकते हैं। Besides this, whenever we want to take a pause in a sentence, we use the comma. That means किसी भी सेंटेंस में जहाँ हमें अल्प समय के लिए पॉज करना हो, वहाँ हम कॉमा का यूज़ करते हैं। इसका यूज़ सिर्फ पॉज के लिए ही नहीं, बल्कि वर्ड्स, फ्रेजेस और क्लॉजेस को कनेक्ट करने के लिए भी किया जाता है, यूजुअली इन द लॉन्गर सेंटेंसेस। इस प्रकार हम कह सकते हैं कि कॉमा के 3 बेसिक यूसेस हैं: लिस्टिंग थिंग्स, क्रिएटिंग पॉजेस एंड कनेक्टिंग क्लॉजेस। कॉमा का प्रयोग 7 कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस लाइक एंड, बट, सो, फॉर, और, नॉर, यट। किसी वाक्य में यदि इन 7 कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस का आप यूज़ करते हैं तो आपको कॉमा का यूज़ करना कंपल्सरी है। के एग्जाम्पल्स हम इस लेसन में ऑलरेडी देख चुके हैं, बट इफ़ यू हैव एनी काइंड ऑफ प्रॉब्लम प्लीज़ वॉच दिस वीडियो अगेन। इसके अलावा कॉमा का यूज़ कॉम्प्लेक्स सेंटेंसेस में बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है और बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स को इस कंसर्न में डाउट भी रहता है। प्लीज़ रिमेंबर, यदि कॉम्प्लेक्स सेंटेंस में डिपेंडेंट क्लॉज पहले और इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज बाद में आता है, तब इन दोनों क्लॉजेस को कनेक्ट करने के लिए कॉमा का यूज़ किया जाता है। इसे हम दूसरे शब्दों में कह सकते हैं, use a comma when a dependent clause is followed by an independent clause। इसी का हमने एग्जाम्पल लिया था, if you work hard you will get success। इस सेंटेंस में द फर्स्ट क्लॉज if you work hard एक डिपेंडेंट क्लॉज है, क्योंकि इसका मीनिंग विदाउट इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज कंप्लीट नहीं है। पूरे अर्थ के लिए ये दूसरे क्लॉज पर डिपेंडेंट है, इसलिए इसे डिपेंडेंट क्लॉज कहा गया। एंड द रेस्ट ऑफ द पार्ट ऑफ दिस सेंटेंसेस, यू विल गेट सक्सेस, ये एक इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज है। सो डिपेंडेंट क्लॉज एंड इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज, इन दोनों को कनेक्ट करने के लिए कॉमा का यूज़ किया जाता है। बट यदि ये ऑर्डर रिवर्स कर दिया जाए, अर्थात कॉम्प्लेक्स सेंटेंस में पहले इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज और बाद में डिपेंडेंट क्लॉज हो, तो उस केस में कॉमा का यूज़ नहीं किया जाता है। डियर स्टूडेंट्स, रिलेटिव एंड एडजेक्टिव क्लॉजेस में भी कॉमा का बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल होता है। कॉमा के प्रयोग या नहीं प्रयोग करने से इसके अर्थ में परिवर्तन हो जाता है। बिसाइड्स दिस, कॉमा का यूज़ अदर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में भी किया जाता है। We will know about other uses of comma in the next lesson. Now it's time for practice. I'm giving you here an exercise. Please do this exercise and be ready for the next lesson. Thank you for watching. Happy learning.